Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today I'm going to talk about a Florida State Senator, Darrell Rouson of St. Petersburg, who wants to bring back join the military or go to jail. Now, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of this. You know, this worked back in the day, and we'll talk about that and why it worked. But in today's military, I don't know if it's going to work. Now, I like the concept. Man, I would love for someone to join the military and get their life turned around, of course. But there's a few things that go along with this bill, and the military has an answer as well. We'll see how this bill goes as time progresses. The bill would allow 25 and under, age 25 and under, facing only misdemeanor charges or misdemeanor offenses to potentially enlist in the military. Now, misdemeanor. Just because it's a misdemeanor, some of these misdemeanors would have to be off the list, like voyeurism. You can have a misdemeanor charge for voyeurism. Now, we had to take the DNA of anybody now with a misdemeanor for voyeurism. You know, you're saying, wait a minute, you can only take the DNA if it's a felony offense. Well, I know in my state of Florida, if it was a misdemeanor for voyeurism, we would take DNA as well. There's certain misdemeanor charges that are more serious than others. So I would say that misdemeanor list would have to be really looked at and confined to just very certain misdemeanors. Now, they do have on there no prior convictions, which makes sense because the Army's not going to take you with a conviction. In most cases, there are some misdemeanors that a waiver could be done, a military waiver can be done, and you can get in. No habitual offender, well, that makes sense. No prior convictions, so no habitual offender. It also says not a violent career criminal. Well, no prior convictions. That should all go hand in hand. It makes sense, but anyway, that's listed on there, which we know darn well if you have a violent career criminal record, you can't go in. But you know, I guess on these bills they must list specifics. I understand that. Now, the armed services would still ask you to pass the ASVAB test. That's the Armed Services Vocational Adaptation Battery Test, okay? Or Aptitude Battery Test. You have to pass that. Those of us in corrections know that would knock out a lot of people, even if this bill made it, okay? And it passed in Florida. That ASVAB test is going to knock out some of these folks, because you've seen some of the folks we get in these jails. Not quite the studious type that would be able to pass that test, okay? They would have to complete basic training. Well, with some of the attitudes we've seen, some of them probably wouldn't make it through basic training. Some would, okay? Don't get me wrong, some would. But there's a lot of obstacles that would have to be faced for someone to get through this, if it even passes, okay? Now, just because a judge pounds their gavel and says, you join the military, you know, in lieu of jail, the military does not have to listen to the judge. Nothing right now is written in law that says the military has to listen to the judge. They can refuse to take this person. They can go on down now with a court order from the judge. Hello, recruiter, in whatever service they choose. Hello, recruiter. I've been ordered by the judge to join up. And the recruiter's office can look over this person, look over their history, look over their file, and say, no, we're not going to do a military waiver for you to join, no matter what the judge says. Well, what happens then? Boop, you go to jail. You serve your time. So, this is not set in stone. Also, my father, who served in the Korean War and World War II, and retired from the Army with 22 years, he told me, you know, back in the day, he saw many people get their lives turned around when the judge sent them to the military. But that's the old days, folks, because as my father explained to me, back in the old days, you get one of these knuckleheads in there that thinks they know everything and they want to be out committing crimes. they would knock some sense into them. They would say, no, you're in the military now. We're a team. We're all one. You're going to get in compliance with what we tell you. Now, let's see. You can't do that today in today's military, folks. Can you imagine? Can you imagine taking them out back of the barracks and having a blanket party and knocking some sense into them, you know, and then saying you're going to get in compliance? You know, everybody's, you know, offended today, and that would be terrible to do that. Well, a lot of people were put on the right track back in the old military. Well, this is the new military. Now, the new military is also much more technology is involved, much more technology, much more advanced, tougher criteria, you know, academically than it was back in the old days. Yes, you still have to do your physical exercise. You still have to pass your PT test every year. You still have to make it through the boot camp, okay? You still have to pass classes for whatever MOS you're in. You know, whatever you decide to be in the military, after the basic training for soldiering, you must go in now and pass your tests for whatever you wish to be in the military. There's a lot of obstacles here. I love the concept. I wish we could do it. If it passes, I hope some of the people do get a military waiver and are allowed to go in the military, because I've had people tell me, I've had old-timers tell me, and a lot of them are in corrections and law enforcement and on the bench even. They've told me, I ran with a wild group. They all ended up in jail or prison. I joined the military, and that's why I'm where I am today. It straightened my life out. So the concept is good. Please don't get me wrong. Let's see if this thing passes, that this proposal from this senator. Join the military or go to jail. Now, history. An American colonel has stated that soldiers who have entered or enlisted in the military who were granted moral waivers, moral character waivers, meaning their moral character was questionable on the outside, but we're going to let them in the military. A great majority of them have failed and were discharged with dishonorable discharge because they could not adapt to military life. So there's another obstacle there. It seems that past history, not way back in the old days, but you know, during the Middle East wars and battles, they've had to have some moral character waivers because we needed more manpower, more men and women to join the military. A lot of them were unsuccessful. They just couldn't adapt to military life. So that's why I say I don't know in today's military how to work out. This is something very interesting. Right now at the end here, I'm going to put the little news clip, I think it's a minute and a half or a minute and 20 seconds, that came out on this. Join the military or go to jail. This is Florida, folks. Florida Senator Darrell Rusin wants to put in join the military or go to jail for misdemeanors, 25 years old and younger, and certain criteria that I stated before must be in place. And the military, whether a judge orders it or not, can still say no. Let me know your thoughts on this, and here's a little clip from the news. Please subscribe, Gary York, True Prison Stories, if you like this video. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year, folks. Happy New Year.
State lawmakers are looking for creative alternatives to prison time for certain first-time low-level offenders. One bill filed for the new legislative session would provide the option of serving in the military instead of behind bars. But as Jake Stofan tells us, even if passed, the idea is likely to run into many obstacles.
A first-time offender, 25 or younger, who's facing convictions carrying up to 4 years in prison, would have the option of serving in the military in lieu of prison time under the legislation. Vietnam veteran Joe West says back during the war, military service instead of jail was a fairly common option for judges to provide.
And they were not any different than my other brothers.
He says in many ways, those who took military service were better off than those who didn't.
It made a lot of good people out of people that may have gone a different path had they not had that option.
Barney Bishop with the Florida Smart Justice Alliance says the idea has merit, especially for nonviolent offenders.
Even though it is a violent profession, because we're trying to help nonviolent offenders have another alternative.
But even if the legislation passes, the option might not work in practice. That's because most branches of the military now explicitly prohibit service as an alternative to criminal conviction.
The military has much higher standards now for entry than we had in the late 60s, early 70s.
But supporters of the military option say Congress would have more authority to make the idea a reality.
I think it would help them understand our country better, and I think it would give them a love of country that a lot of them these days are lacking.
The bill has been filed in both the Florida House and Senate. Lawmakers begin their annual session January 11th.